So as we talk about this visioning process and visioning, what we're really doing is we're asking some very basic questions again. What is church? How do we define that? How do we talk about that? And one of the phrases that we've used for church is a missional community. Missional is a nice newish word. All it means is a community or a church that is engaging in the mission of Jesus. Right, so for so long, we saw church as a place that will do things and people will come to us. What missional tries to revert back to is as church used to be, which is the people who we come here to be refreshed so that we go out and be the church in our neighborhoods. So missional is nothing new. They just keep changing the words every now and then. I think the new hip word is discipleship church, which is, these are all the same thing. How are we chasing after being Jesus's church? So as we talk about missional, part of it is this great hope of us bringing the peace of God to our world. That's kind of what the church is. We get to be the peace of God, the peacemakers coming through. And so one of the questions that I think is important then is as we try to talk about being church is what does success look like as Jesus' church? How do we define success? And it's really tempting to have this as the BIPs. Everybody loves BIPs, and if you'll excuse my language, that's butts in pews. We count it every week. That's the number. That's how we decide if we're doing okay or not. But I think success looks like faithfulness. Faithfulness to God's call. Hopefully, as we're faithful, we'll see healthy growth as well. But success comes from faithfulness. And faithfulness comes from doing Jesus' mission. What is the mission that Jesus has given us as his people as we grow together? So, being Jesus' church means following Jesus together as a community. It means that as a group, we embody Jesus' mission, his love to go and to bring that to other people in our actions and inviting them to be a part of this. So the two questions that we use to help decide our way through, and there's lots of different ways you could look at these questions, but the way I have them up here is, and we'll ask this about everything, how does this help us to better follow Jesus together? So how does Sunday morning help us to better follow Jesus together? How do our Thursday night kids activities, how does each of the thing we do, is this helping us to become disciples, to grow closer to Jesus, to live out that faith? And then the next aspect here is how does this help us to invite others to follow Jesus alongside us? So it's just basic questions. How can we be more like Jesus, and how can we invite others to be a part of the process? Another way of looking at this is through the lens of help or hinder. What does each aspect of what we do help or hinder us from being disciples, us from growing closer to Jesus, or help or hinder new people from being able to come in and be a full part of our community, following Jesus with us? So why? Why change at all? Because Jesus calls us to a mission. In Matthew 28:16-20, we see what's often called the Great Commission, but really it's just Jesus describing what his followers will be like. That we will be people who go. We don't just stay. Go and we share Jesus in our words. We baptize people into the community. We trust that wherever we go, Jesus is alongside us. And we teach them everything Jesus commanded, he says in that. And I love that because we, as Anabaptists, can sometimes be a little bit of Jesus fundamentalists. We're going to hold on tight to Jesus, even when something else might not make sense. We're going to hold on to that Jesus way, and I think that that is beautiful as a way of approaching things. Because we see the kingdom of God, that kingdom of heaven, is already here, and also not quite all the way here. This idea that God's kingdom come and God's will be done, that is the church. That is us. We are the community that starts to make that happen. This phrasing I used, just a way of describing potentially a way that we can look at things, a way that can be inviting to other people, is this church on Linwell Road is a church of people who have questions, who crave community, who long to love like Jesus, a place for you. This is describing Christian faith, that we can ask questions, we can grow together, that we can be a community working together, even amongst the things that we don't agree on, that this is a place for you and also for all of those yous out there who don't have a place like this yet, who don't have a community like this yet. The way we went about this process is we got together with the church leadership. So that was primarily the church leadership council board. It's always hard keeping up with the different names of things. The different people who are the chairs of the boards, and we invited spouses. And we got together and we prayerfully looked at some changes that we could do. We looked at some basic things that would help us as a community better follow Jesus. And then from there, we just collected a smaller group out of there to kind of go over, well, here are the things that we agreed we'd like to explore. How do we even start? Which one should we do now or later? How do we get to this? So the smaller group got together and tried making a bit of a starting point plan so that we can go and start to collect you and your ideas and your experiences to be a part of this process. So we are left with this question: how can we faithfully serve Jesus here as a part of this church community, as a part of St. Catharines, as a community of faith? What are the things that we are uniquely situated to minister to? How is this area unique, our neighbors unique, us as a people unique in a way that we can go and embody Jesus' mission? Because there's a lot of churches in this town. Jesus doesn't need another building. He needs us to go and to be his mission, inviting people alongside us. What's our unique place in that? And let's just name the troubles that come with change. Change is scary. It is. We don't like change. Change can make us grumpy. That's how I feel when things change. I like things as they were. And change is hard. To change well requires hard work, working together. But change is part of faithfulness. We are not called to go and to stay the same, but to continue to find new ways of embodying Jesus' mission as the world changes around us. And to be disciples of Jesus actually requires us to always be changing. Those little bits that help us get closer and closer to the foot of the cross, to the way of Jesus. The hope that I see in this church, and the hope that we had as leaders for this church, is that as we prayerfully discern changes, that we'll be able to come up with some simple things that will work. And that's where we come up with this Vision 2024 thing. And a lot of these things are going to seem maybe more radical at first, but as we look through them, what we may hopefully realize is that they are all very basic steps, very easy things for us to do. So some of the things that we looked at is we wanted our changes to be simple. We don't want it to be a lot of work. It's going to be some work, but there's only so many of us to do it. It has to be a simple change that we're able to make. All of the changes have to be centered around Jesus and the mission Jesus gives us. If there is a change that we want to make that isn't centered in Jesus, I personally am not interested in doing it. That doesn't get me excited. I don't want to put energy to that. And these are changes that take our neighbors into account. Outsider-oriented changes. That means we're making changes so that other people can maybe more easily become a part of the body of Christ that meets here and serves this community. Okay, so what do these changes mean for us? Why change at all? To be faithful to Jesus. That's the only reason a church should change. It's not about doing the new hip thing or the whatever thing. It's not about rebranding and finding that. It's because Jesus calls us to faithfulness and we want to be faithful. Why change the name of the church? What's wrong with the name? Well, names in particular can act as a bridge or a barrier for people. Bridges are things that help us cross over, and we are a bit of a different ethnic community as Mennonites. We need to build bridges to make it easier for people to participate and know what it's like to be a part of us. But names can also work then as a barrier. I always envision names kind of as if you remember what it was like when you were dating. For some of us, this will take longer back memories than others. And this will take a lot of imagination on your part. I want you to imagine that I have hair. Now imagine that I have a mullet. A mullet is where it's short at the front, it's long at the back. Business in the front, party at the back, and I go on a date with the person who will eventually be my wife, Jen. What's the first thing Jen notices about me? My mullet. I might be a great person. She may find somewhere down the line that we are able to spend decades of our lives together. We're able to go and raise a great family. But my mullet is getting in the way of having those conversations. A name is kind of like a haircut. We want it to be such a way that it continues the conversation instead of the person suddenly getting a phone call from a friend and saying, I have to go to this emergency, right? That's what a name ends up being. So when we talk about changes to the building too, we're looking at some basic changes that help us welcome people, that help us, because we're renting out this building too. Let's make it a more welcoming space for people who come through here so that maybe they think, oh, when they're being drawn by the Spirit to worship somewhere, maybe they give us a chance. Because right now, we do not have a lot of traffic of new people coming through our church. If we did, we would see our church community on Sundays be made up of about half people who grew up in the church in the Mennonite tradition, and half people who've come to faith and believe that that's true. Until we're at half and half, we're really more of a community center than a reflective community of Jesus' church. So that's why we want to make some changes so that we can go, because we get excited by that other half when they come, and they are very excited to learn about your experience following the Jesus who calls us to peace. There are people in this community who would be so excited to know that a church like you exists. And why change discipleship? So that was one of the other parts we have here. We have a 101 class. We used to just wait until we had kids grow up to a certain age, and then they magically became the right age to be baptized, right? Because we don't baptize people as infants. We wait until they're 16. Is that really different? So we want to go and look at how we can grow together. And some of that will be, we're going to make sure we have classes more often so people can go and be a part of things. We want to make sure that we have opportunities for you to grow outside of Sunday morning. And some of the other things too, I think we've just thought about things wrong. When we stopped having a German worship service on Sunday mornings, that was the right decision, but it was the wrong conversation. How are we serving our neighbors, our people here, in their heart languages in such a way that they're able to be a part of this vibrant community and the community of other people around there? So one of the other things besides the 101 classes, we want to start having some Sunday afternoons where we can have some sort of German gathering, singing, worship service. The reason it's afternoon and not morning is because if we have it in the morning, it takes away from other church communities, accidentally or on purpose. By having it in the afternoon, we'll be able to invite our other German-speaking neighbors to come and be a part of things, and maybe have them at their church sometimes too. Why is that important? Because your discipleship is important. And for the people who grew up speaking a different language than English, it's important for you to be able to pray and hear the message of Jesus, hear the stories of your brothers and sisters in faith in your heart language. That's the same reason why on Saturday nights, we've invited a group to come in and they have their Bible study, they have a little worship service in Spanish. They're able to do that at no cost. The gentleman who leads that group was emotional when he heard that we didn't want to charge them. We just wanted to give their building, because he had been calling around and he said, do you know how rare it is for a church to do that? What a tragedy that we don't just open up our doors to communities and these new faith expressions growing up. So that's how we're going to approach discipleship. All right, so what's next for us and what's next for you? We are inviting you to participate in the prayer, right? These are prayerfully discerned changes. We're not trying to make changes just out of personal preference. We're trying to make changes that the Spirit guides us to, and that will take prayer, that will take time. We're inviting you and us to be a part of this local mission, not just a church that gathers together and does the good work of sending money to help in other places, but to continue doing that and to be a part of seeing people changed by Jesus here, in this place, in this community, in this building. Lives changed, people being baptized not just at the age of 16. There has been a lot going on in this community for a long time. I know we've talked about this a lot. I know that I may feel new to you, but this conversation isn't new. It's not new to this community, and it's not new to Jesus' churches over the 2,000 years. Change is always upon us as long as the Spirit is guiding us to change. Guided by what I think are two helpful questions, and I'll read those again. How does this help us to better follow Jesus together? Let's ask that about everything we do. We may ask those about things and not make changes because we're discerning that does help us. But maybe we can learn and change things slightly here and there. And how does this help us to invite others to follow Jesus alongside us? That is something that we have not yet been successful as a community. So as we make those changes, it's to go and to make it easier so that your neighbors, so that maybe your children, your children's friends, so that people who are just moving to the area looking for church, people who've had some sort of spiritual moment and are looking, could maybe come and be a part of things here, be discipled here, follow Jesus for the first time here. This is from a hymn from the Blue Hymnal. It's a beautiful prophetic song. It says, "Not in the dark of buildings confining, not in some heaven light years away, but here in this place, the new light is shining. Now is the kingdom, now is the day." That is our hope through all of the changes that we have, that we are honoring the call of the Spirit to embody Jesus' mission now, here in this place.